Hello, we're going to start working on textures in charcoal. So I'm going to demonstrate a variety of textures such as metal, wood, glass, hair, and how you can achieve those easily using charcoal vine and a charcoal pencil and eraser. First off, I'm doing a charcoal ground on a piece of paper. I've taped off 2 windows and I've rubbed the vine in. I'm taking a Kleenex now and I'm going to dab it on the top of the left box to gain a texture. And as you can see, it's a subtle texture, but very nice. I can keep that or wipe it away. Now I'm using a kneaded eraser to do a texture on the right side. As you can see, it's very high contrast. Here's another technique. If you're using the Kleenex or the kneaded eraser to do a texture, don't make it the same regular rubber stamp texture like the one on the left. Move your wrist back and forth so you can vary the texture. Now I'm going to spray the box on the right. I've masked off the box on the left so I can leave it unsprayed, and I've gone outside to do so. Okay, right side is sprayed, left side is not, and I've drawn pumpkins. I'd like to show you how you can use an eraser over the sprayed areas and nothing will erase. However, everything erases easily before you put the spray on. What I can use to put some lighter areas in over the sprayed area is a white charcoal pencil. However, compare it to the erased marks on the left side. As you can see, it's more effective if you can erase your highlights before you spray. Now I'm removing the tape. One trick to easily removing tape without tearing the paper is to take a blow dryer and heat it a little bit as you're pulling the tape off sideways. This is a really nice trick, particularly if you have sticky tape. So now I've sprayed the right side. I've got the left side done with eraser. Now I can move on and start doing more textures. Here I've used vine for a ground and the method of charcoal subtraction with the eraser to draw a brush and highlight it. My next step would be to grab a charcoal pencil, and now I'm putting in some hatch shadows over the hatch subtractives in the brush. Next step I'm going to do is work on the metal part. Metal, when you shade it with charcoal, it's generally going to have very bold, generally sharp edges, some extreme lights, and extreme darks. So you have to really look for the pattern in the metal. I am now using a smudging tool alongside with my charcoal pencil to smudge the handle of the brush, smudge the metal parts, and also smudge the cast shadow, which is on my table. So I'm also grabbing my eraser, my tiny eraser, and I'm cleaning up a couple of different areas, and there you go, it's done. Now I'm going to draw something a little trickier in metal, which is an etched Tibetan knife. First, I used charcoal vine to create the ground and outline the knife, as you can see. My next step would be to erase on the blade broad areas of highlights. And now I've taken a charcoal pencil and I'm drawing in some of the shapes, not all of them, and I'm using my tiny eraser to brighten up and highlight those shaped areas. The key to drawing this knife and its shadows and highlights is to simply focus first on the highlighted areas on the metal, then draw over it, then take the small eraser and mark in some subtractive areas. Clear glass can be a difficult texture to create with charcoal. What you have to do is look through the clear glass to see what's behind it, and that comprises a lot of what you draw. So what I see behind my clear glass, I can see the drapery, the green drapery with the white napkin, and I put that in. I also erase areas of the drapery within the glass. Now I do have some outlining done with charcoal vine, so it's lighter. And I'm going to use a small eraser to subtract a very light area and ellipse on the rim. Also subtract very carefully any and all highlights that you're seeing. Try not to outline the glass unless it's really there. And good luck with that. Next, going to tackle wood texture on a wooden birdhouse. So I've sketched in the birdhouse contour, as you can see. I'm now taking the eraser and using it in such a way as to mimic the wood grain that I'm seeing. Next, take a little bit of vine, darken a few areas, again mimicking the grain. Now I would take my blending stick and blend some of that in. I'm doing the same procedure for the roof. I have drawn in the slats with my charcoal pencil. I'm erasing texture. It's not as strong in the roof as the body of the birdhouse, but here it is finished and it doesn't look too bad. This one's a little bit trickier. Metal pot, I call it my Leprechaun Pot of Gold. It's made out of copper and iron. So first I draw the contour and use the eraser to pop out what highlights I can see in the copper, like that. Next, I take my smudging tool and I smudge some darker areas into the shadows of the copper. My next move is to draw in the iron feet and the iron handle and shade that part of the metal, mostly dark with a few little highlights. And there's my leprechaun pot. Okay, now for the carved wooden bear. I've laid my vine ground in. I've used my vine to sketch contour of the bear. And now I'm going to break off a small piece of the vine and use it sideways to start etching out those carved bits of fur. It's not going to look like real bear fur because we're looking at trying to get carved wood look. So now I'm following the form, I'm following the pattern of the carved hair, and I'm going all over the bear's body. Okay, I finished this part. Now I move on to the next part, which would be using the eraser to pull out and subtract features of the face, the mouth, the nose, the ear, the eye, and also using a charcoal pencil to detail in some of those facial features. I can also go back to the fur pelt of the bear with the small eraser, and I can highlight any areas I wish to highlight. Probably next I will grab a smudging tool and perhaps smudge up some areas. And so let's take a look at that. Okay, I've used the smudging tool. I've finished off some areas. It's not quite complete, but it's complete enough to show you guys how to do that kind of texture on wood, carved wood, and other rough things like straw. Thank you. My last demo here is going to involve drapery, stone, and flowers. Here's my Buddha kitty set up in a still life. I vine charcoaled the ground, rubbed it out, contoured some lines in with the vine. Now I'm going a different way. I am blocking in all the darks first with the vine. It's very messy looking, but that's okay. What I can do next is block out the light areas using my eraser. At this point, it's looking super messy. I'm used to that. It's okay. I'm going to be rubbing out and using a blending stump to blend the two colors together, the black and the white, before I spray. Now, usually I have you guys blocking out the lights first and then the darks, but you can actually, if you know what you're doing, do them both together to save time. And maybe you want to try that. So I have softened the drapes using my fingertips and my blending stump because the drapery is what I'm focusing on right now, especially since it makes up the entire background around the Buddha stone cat and the rose. So that's almost done. I can take an eraser and touch up some parts before I spray it. This drawing is still in its beginning stages, but I have pretty much finished the drapery. I'm going over it with the eraser again before I give it its first spray, and I erased petals in the rose, so I have that taken care of. So I can spray freely without worrying about sealing in any dark areas. Here's what it looks like at this point. I've always also used the larger eraser to smooth out some of the areas to make the drapery look soft. I actually really like using Krylon Workable Fixative. Make sure you buy the Workable. That means you can still draw over the spray. If you get Final Fixative, you're going to fully seal up the drawing and it's done. Okay, so now let's move on to the rose. First of all, I'm using a charcoal pencil to sort of outline some of the bolder leaves that will be in highlight and shadow. Notice I'm not doing all the petals, just a few. Just pick out the ones you think have the most interesting shape and go with it. I am now using the side of the charcoal pencil to put some pigment down that I can rub in using a smudging stick. Okay, the miracle of the smudging stick. It's able to blend and soften those light pink petals on the rose. Now it's time for yet another phase of subtraction, working on some of the details. Blending, erasing, brightening the rose. Okay, here's a finished rose. I ran the drawing outside and I sprayed the rose a bit just to seal it in. I may or may not come back to it later as I finish the rest of the piece. Now it's time to work on the stone Buddha kitty. This was a present to me because we have a cat whose name is Buddha. So now we have a stone Buddha kitty. I am drawing in the contour lines of the robes and the cat's form here. Notice I have my hand on a Ziploc baggie so I don't mistakenly smear some of the charcoal. This is such a messy assignment. Okay, the next step is I'm going to reground the cat with the vine. I'm going to make some darker areas in his shaded parts. He's kind of a greenish gray, and compared to the drapery that he's sitting against, he's definitely dark with highlights. So here we go. I'm going to next use the tiny eraser to pull out some highlights. Okay, highlights are pulled out using my tiniest eraser. Still looks kind of messy. It's also pretty high contrast. So my next step will be to reduce that high contrast a little bit. The way I do this is I take a soft tissue and I dab it to get a light textural surface and pull away some of that excess charcoal. Now it's time to put in the dark leaves. I did that with a charcoal pencil and I'm smudging the leaves now. I took that tiny eraser and I pulled out a few hatch line from the leaf. Now I am using my small eraser and my smudging stick to highlight the stitches, highlight the edge of that napkin, and smooth in those dark creases of the drape. I'm almost done. I'm just going to run over everything, give everything a once over, and then if it looks good, I'll spray it and I will have been done. Now notice that I've not used any charcoal white pencil on this. That could have been an option, but I did so much erasing that I didn't really need to use that white charcoal pencil. Okay guys, thanks for watching this demonstration and good luck with your own textures. Talk to you later.